Yep, so we always take the opportunity at CME to make sure that we can bring in some actual sort of real life examples of what organisations are doing in relation to various topics, and also the experiences of people that do have, we call it lived experience, but it really just means personal experience of not just poor mental health or mental health conditions, but also, unfortunately, experience of being stigmatised and discriminated against in the workplace as a result of those conditions. So unfortunately, our workplace partner that I was hoping would be able to come along and speak today was unable to. So in place of that, I'm going to start by just sharing a very short video of another one of our volunteers whose organisation has been taking part in the CME Work programme for several years. And after that, I'm going to very quickly highlight a really great case study that's available on our website. So I'm just going to share my screen and show the short video first. I can't see anything other than the video when I'm sharing, so if there are any issues with sound, please just somebody unmute and give me a shout.
I'm Sharon Edwards, Chair of the Home Office Disability Network. The most simple thing that I tell managers is to take time to talk to their staff and listen to what they say. Not to jump in with solutions, remedies, but to sit back and listen and take it on board what they're saying. The CME resource that I use the most are the e-learning dramas. The one that I always show at every session is called the Bad Mouthing drama. And it's a group in a breakout area. And they're just having a general discussion. Then somebody comes in the door and she says, "No, I'm not very good, so I'm going home. So hopefully I'll see you tomorrow." The minute she closes the door, they all start, "No, who does she think she is? No, we're having to stay late to cover her duties. We're having extra workloads." And then they start with the name calling. And it really opens people's eyes. It's getting the right message across. It's showing what's inappropriate, and it allows people to have that discussion at how you could better deal with a situation. So it's actually changing the culture. And I do find that as an employer, when we hold sessions with one person sharing their personal lived experience, other people start to open up. That senior manager made my life a misery. The bullying by her went on for about 18 months until it got to one day that I went home and thinking, will I just end it and put myself out of my misery? It just gets people talking. It allows managers to understand better, because very often they haven't got any mental health issues and have never encountered it. And it just puts that real life situation to them. It's important that the fight against stigma and discrimination is led by those with lived experience. The value of lived experience can't be underestimated. Sharing lived experience is a therapy for the person telling the story, and it builds trust and a safe environment for others to share their own experiences.
So yeah, I mentioned there that Passport Office has been taking part in the CME Work programme for a number of years. Sharon's done some fantastic work. She is the engagement lead for that organisation. She's not herself in a HR role. This came about from her Just as she mentioned, through her own personal experiences, she became really passionate about raising awareness. She became a CME volunteer, and off the back of that, they started up the Disability Network in the Home Office. There's lots more information and a few more videos from Sharon and about other things that she's set up in the workplace and how she's gone about that. And as we've mentioned in the chat already, I will make sure that you get shared links to everything that we have discussed. There is a vast amount of information and resources on the CME website, and it can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming to try and navigate that if you're not quite sure what you're looking for. So I will make sure that you get that. So the other thing that I wanted to share that I mentioned there was a written case study. I am going to share my screen and go through that, but I also, if you prefer not to look at documents on a shared screen, I've put the link in the chat there. So if you prefer to have it open on your computer and look at it yourself, it is on that page. It's the Self-Assessment Toolkit Feature Case Studies. It's building block number 6, Reasonable Adjustments. If you want to have that open, and I'm going to share my screen now and just have a little look at what Burness Paull did in relation to reasonable adjustments and confident informed line managers. So just let me know if that's working for everybody. I'll zoom in.
Yeah, it's working.
So I'll read through this super quickly and then we can move on and hear from Nikki. But one of the key findings from Burness Paull, again, when they took part in the CME Work programme, was the results of the staff survey that they carried out and some drop-in sessions to get feedback from employees. And it highlighted there was a need for an improved return to work process after absence. Although employees were confident that they would be supported by human resources, they were not confident that line managers had the training to adequately deal with mental health problems. Further analysis of this revealed that line managers also did not feel that they had the confidence or the expertise to have successful conversations around mental health and reasonable adjustments. It was clear that one of our first priorities was to open up for conversations on mental health in our organisation. And we identified that one way we could do this would be in relation to the absence management and return to work process. Prior to partnering with CME, Burness Paull had been ready to launch a new absence management policy, process and manager guidelines. But on the back of the results of the survey, they decided to reassess the approach and include specific guidance for managers around how to have return to work conversations when an employee has had a mental health related absence. The new guidelines give examples of the types of conditions that employees may experience and how to spot signs and symptoms of those. They incorporated language and examples from the CME's chat tool, which I mentioned earlier, and we will send you the links to. And that was to help managers open up conversations. They also included specific guidance on when and how to make occupational health referrals and specific guidance on reasonable adjustments, including a list of possible examples of basically what the organisation was saying, this is reasonable. We have incorporated signposting to external resources such as our Employee Assistance Programme and counselling services, as well as links to external resources such as the Scottish Association for Mental Health, Samaritans and Mind. In conjunction with that policy and manager guidelines, Burness Paull introduced new mental health categories in the human resources system so that they can now more accurately record and report on mental health related absences. And that was not only to reinforce the business case for ensuring mentally healthy workplace, but it also allowed them to pick up on mental health related absence issues quicker. So the final line here, this allowed us to ensure that each time a mental health related absence is recorded, the line manager is prompted to check in with the employee, open up a conversation and offer support. So I'll stop sharing there. as we've said previously, if you do have any questions coming up during this section, please pop them in the Q&A. To keep us to time, I am going to introduce now my colleague Nikki, who is a CME volunteer, but is also here to speak from two perspectives. I won't elaborate too much as I'll allow Nikki to do that. But yeah, Nikki, yeah, welcome. Thank you for giving us your time, and please share with us.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences today. I don't have any slides because I'll be honest, I didn't have time to put anything together, so I'm just going to talk. So I'll start by giving a little bit of background about who I am and my own mental health journey. I started experiencing really anxiety issues in my teens, and then I also developed depression as well. And it kind of dominated my teens and my early 20s, but for various reasons, I didn't seek a proper diagnosis until February 2020, which is when I went to my doctor and I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. And then the pandemic hit, and well, we all know how that went. Not well. So I've worked for my company for the last 9.5 years as a facilities manager, but I'm also, as Rachel says, a volunteer with CME. So I'm here today to share my lived experience with mental ill health in the workplace from two different perspectives, that of me as an employee being supported or not by managers, but also that of myself as a manager supporting my own team. The two very different experiences, but they have actually influenced each other in my life. So I've had some really great experiences as managers, as an employee, but also some bad ones as well. When I started back in 2014, there wasn't really any mention of mental health or well-being. I don't remember it being openly discussed or thought about like it is today. I didn't have regular check-ins with my manager to see how I was doing, see if I needed any support. It was really all focused on the work and performance, how I was doing in that respect. I didn't even reveal to my manager at that point that I experienced mental ill health. I didn't really feel comfortable doing so. I felt that she would not be supportive and caring, and I felt that she would treat me differently if I told her. And her management style actually exacerbated the issues I was experiencing. So not only was I not able to speak up and ask for that support I needed, but my mental health was actually being made worse by the working environment I was in. I wasn't aware of this term at the time, but I began to display signs of presenteeism. I was afraid to take any time off because I felt I had to be seen to be working hard, regardless of what I was going through personally. Obviously, with the wonderful gift of hindsight, I can see now that had I been able to go to that manager and be open and have a frank discussion with her about how I was feeling and ask for the support that I needed, things could have been different. And maybe had she had the support and training like this that she would get nowadays on how to spot the signs of mental ill health and how to support your staff and talk to them, maybe things could have been different. But as I say, hindsight is a wonderful thing. The really important thing to remember is that this was less than 10 years ago. We're not talking the dark ages, we're talking, living memory. We've come a long way in a relatively short space of time in how we approach and talk about mental ill health, and my own experiences reflect this. If back then I'd been able to talk to my manager about my mental ill health, it would have saved me from a lot of self-stigma. In all likelihood, it probably would have enabled me to cope with my anxiety better, because I wouldn't have been trying to hide it, or I wouldn't have seen it as something shameful or a kind of weakness, which is really how I felt at the time. So moving on and looking at my experiences with managers over the last 2 to 3 years, and it's a completely different story. Now, while the pandemic obviously brought a lot of harm and difficulty and bad times for so many people, myself included, I do feel it has helped to open up the discussion around mental ill health more. And certainly the company I work for has responded to that. We've gone from well-being being important, but never quite being at the top of the agenda, to doing things like introducing mental health first aiders. We've introduced a wellbeing hub, which has loads of information and links to support that you can access anytime, anywhere. We've added wellbeing rooms to all our offices, which are great for when you need somewhere to take a break or deal with an issue. I mean, I've personally used them when I've been having a panic attack, and it's been really great to have that just private, quiet space to go when you need that. And we've also got loads of support for managers to be able to support the staff in the right way. So since getting my diagnosis of general anxiety disorder in February 2020, I've found myself being far more open about my anxiety, and I'm much more happy to discuss it and the impact it has on my day-to-day life. We spend so much of our time at work. We can't shut off that part of ourselves for 8+ hours a day or whatever we work. And we shouldn't have to. We really shouldn't. My two most recent managers have been so completely different from my experience with that first manager back in 2014. My family have experienced some very difficult times since 2019 with the serious ill health of one family member. And this, alongside the pandemic, has had a big impact on my anxiety. However, the big difference now is that when my manager calls me or messages me and asks me how I am, which she does so much more regularly now, it's such a regular thing, I can be honest and say when I'm having a bad day or if I need support. There was one period when things were so bad that I actually just called my manager one day and said, look, I know I'm supposed to be in work this afternoon, but I just can't do it. I need some time. And he just said, don't worry about it. Just put your out of office on, turn your phone off, and I'll deal with it. It was that simple for him. I couldn't have imagined doing that back in 2014. In fact, the head of my department regularly tells us nothing would make him happier than if he were to call us and we told him that we're just out on a walk because we needed a break or we needed some fresh air. He really encourages us to do what's best for us and to work in the way that's best for us personally, which is so completely different to that manager back in 2014. And whilst, my manager in the last few years and my manager back in 2014, they're like chalk and cheese in terms of their approach to management. It's true also that they're better able to support me nowadays because of the support and training they themselves receive. They're trained in how to spot the signs of someone struggling, how to open a conversation with someone. That's things that manager back in 2014 probably didn't even know how to do, and certainly didn't have the support behind them to do so. Because I'm able to be my authentic self at work nowadays, I'm open and honest about my mental health, and I can ask for and receive the support I need for that. I feel I'm actually a better employee than I was back then. I no longer suffer from that presenteeism, but I think I work better nowadays because of the support that I receive. So whilst I live with anxiety, it doesn't mean that I experience it every day or that it affects my work all the time. But I do appreciate that I can say now when things are bad and when I need that extra support. It makes me feel so much more valued as an employee, and I actually enjoy my job a lot more as I work now with supportive, understanding and caring people. And it now means that I don't experience that level of self-stigma that I did back in 2014 because I'm not hiding a part of myself, and I don't feel like my anxiety is anything shameful or wrong. It's just a part of me as much as any other part of me is. And that just in itself is incredibly helpful and important. So now that I've shared some of my experience with managers and my own mental ill health, I'll move on and share my experience of being a manager supporting one of my team with their mental health. So I became a manager back in 2015 and I was completely new to it. So I did receive some training on being a manager, but I remember the focus was more on supporting performance than thinking about the person themselves. I saw being a manager as something that was really important, and I was really keen to do my best to support my team. In 2019, one of my team experienced a bereavement that really affected them badly. They had not, to the best of my knowledge, experienced any mental ill health before this period. but the bereavement did sadly trigger some issues for them. So I supported them through the initial stages of the grieving process as best I could. I gave them plenty of time off and chances to talk openly and honestly about how they were feeling when they came back to work. But as the months went on, it became clear that there was a bigger problem going on and they needed more support from me. Now, I'm happy to be honest and admit I wasn't really 100% sure what the best way to support them was. So I did what probably most managers would do in that situation. I looked for information and support to enable me to help them. So I looked on our intranet for advice on the best way to help them, but I couldn't really find anything that was directly relevant. So I kind of felt like my only option was to seek support from HR, but I felt reluctant to do that as I didn't want to make it a sort of formal HR problem. I wanted to be able to support them myself without bringing in others, which is also what I know they wanted as well. So thankfully, I was able to seek advice on how to support them without giving specifics of the person or situation to protect their privacy. But it would have been so much more useful if that same information had been available for me to look up and access for myself. I was so scared of saying or doing the wrong thing that I needed that support to enable me to support my team member. Basically, in the end, I had a private chat with them, a chat not mean, so it felt less informal and intimidating. And I just listened to what they had to say. And by doing that, I was able to gauge what the best support I could offer with them. But to be honest, I think just listening to them was as much support as anything else I did. I felt really frustrated that the information I needed wasn't so readily available and that I couldn't just immediately help them. The good news is they did go on to receive the help they needed and they're fully recovered today. So the support did work, but it could have been a much easier process. Nowadays, just like with my own manager, the information and support we have available is so different than it was even just a few short years ago. I recently had another member of my team return to work after she experienced a bad accident that I knew could result in delayed mental ill health. But this time I've been able to access the right information and support so that I can support her right from the start without having to go through HR first. I feel so much more confident now being able to help my team because I know I have the training and information available to let me do so. My team and I regularly have chats that aren't about work, and so this helps me spot any signs that they may need some support. If they mention something that makes me think there's something to worry about. I've learned just as much from the support and help that's given to me by the good managers I've had as the bad one back in 2014. And I use these lessons when I try to support my own team members as well. So if I take both my experiences of being managed or supported through mental ill health as an employee, both the good and the bad, and also trying to support my own team through their own mental ill health, I've learned a lot since 2014. My best advice to anyone trying to support an employee through any kind of mental ill health is to take the fear out of talking about it. Just make it a common everyday discussion so that it doesn't have to feel like a big thing if they need to ask for help or support, or if you notice any signs they may need help. This also helps to remove the stigma around talking about mental health in the workplace, because then it's just a conversation like any other. And also make sure you have the knowledge to support your employees when they do need help. You as a manager, nobody is expected to diagnose or treat a mental ill health issue, but the people in your team do need to know that they have your support and understanding. And often just being listened to and being heard goes a long way to helping. The better supported and informed you as a manager are, the better support and information you can give to your team when they need it. And that gives you the confidence to help them as well, I think. So yeah, that's my experience.
Thanks, Nikki. There have been a couple of questions come in, but we're a tiny bit over time. So Patty, will we go to the break?
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. If you have any questions for Nikki, if you can add them to the Q&A or the chat, Nikki will consider them and answer those she feels she can and wants to answer, given the lived experience element of this segment. So thank you very much. So now we're going to go into a 10-minute break again. If you can come back for maybe 37 past, that would be much appreciated. And then we'll move on to the breakout discussions. That's okay. So thank you. And I'll see you in 10 minutes.